Monday night in the FA Cup. Those Stockley Park officials helped Man United. They did the dirty on us with that ridiculous VAR review. They reviewed the reviews of the reviews. Ridiculous. But Samuel Johnson once said that revenge is an act of passion. Vengeance is an act of justice. This Saturday, let's hope that Villa get vengeance. This is Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I'm Baz Barrett. My waving co-host, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel at Talk Trinity, is Mr. Will Forrest. We have let him out of Talk Trinity Towers, where he has been furiously manning the Twitter channel over the last week or so, because there has been so much happening on and off the field in terms of Aston Villa in this January and also this January transfer window. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go and check out our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby you'll see all the latest Villa news, polls, debates, comments, everything you need to know, and some things you probably don't need to know, but we're throwing them in there anyway, just to get that full Villa service to your eyes. And if you're listening to this on one of our podcast channels, Spotify, Apple, Google, all the others that I've forgotten that we'll probably do in the roundup at the end, you are aware that you can listen to us as well. We mentioned the YouTube, you can watch us. I mean, what a combination indeed. But speaking of a combination, it's the Man United combination this week, because we start with Man United and we'll end with Man United. And Monday night's prime time BBC viewing at Old Trafford, Manchester United 1, Aston Villa 0. Safe to say there were a few talking points during the game which have continued after the game. And I won't take credit for this wordplay, but we're going to first talk about VAR, or as my co-host has dubbed it, and maybe we'll give a sneak preview into his thoughts about what we're going to discuss. Villa are robbed. So I'm assuming, Will, that you weren't very happy about that decision for the Danny Ings goal to be disallowed for offside. I mean, it was quite a strange scenario watching it play live, especially being as though I'd already jumped up and down and cheered. So that was a humiliating retreat when the goal was disallowed.
Well, first of all, I've got to give props to one of the Twitter followers. I put out there, so can I have your 3-word reviews? And one of them put, Villa are robbed. Fantastic. Loved it. So that's where that came from. So I've robbed it from you.
The cycle continues.
Circle of life. Matt Kendrick did it to me once, so I've done it back. Anyway, going on to your question about Danny Ings' goal, of course, I mean, it tore my world in two to see that Danny Ings was so happy 1 minute and then he was crying the next. But what a stupid decision. What an absolutely ridiculous decision, in the fact that they looked at the Ramsey situation, then they looked to see if Watkins was offside, then if Ings was offside, then if Ings had handballed it. When they realised all of that was okay, they went back to Ings offside, back to Watkins offside, then they went back and said, oh yeah, Ramsey stood still there and did an impression of a tree, and we got to disallow it for that. Yet Michael Oliver, in defence to him at the time, is like, well, it's a goal. And he's obviously had the instructions from VAR to have a look, and they kept probing him for it to go on for 3 minutes and 45 seconds. You know, it's absolutely, I could have gone downstairs, had a wee and come back up, and there'd still have been sorting out the decision. It was everything that's wrong with VAR was summed up there. And the other thing about it, Alan Shearer afterwards hit the nail on the head where he said, why are you allowed VAR just because it's at a Premier League ground, yet if that happens at Birmingham versus Plymouth, for example, this is the only other game I can remember from the FA Cup that
Good
wasn't
game,
in the Premier.
Good game,
Yeah, great. If that happens there, the goal's given. The goal's just given. They can't look at VAR. So why should they do it and potentially punish teams who are playing at a Premier League ground? Yeah, it's ridiculous. It should have been allowed. Ramsey did nothing wrong. Cavani ran into him. Cavani's a beast of a man. How's he going to fall over against a schoolboy? You know what I mean? It's annoying. It's annoying, really annoying, especially because we deserve to win that match.
Oh, I think in terms of come on to the performance in a moment, but yeah, I'd certainly agree we're miles the better team. And that was one of the worst, probably the worst I've ever seen Man United play, which is more annoying that they still won. But in terms of the VAR decision, we'll try and bring some editorial balance to this, and I'll float it up there. I think I'll know what the reaction is going to be. But in terms of, I understand Shearer's point, what shouldn't be for some grounds and for others. You could say that means they should put it for all of the grounds, not for none. It is an odd situation to be, because yeah, if that would have happened at Blues Plymouth, as you mentioned, that would have been a goal. In terms of the official explanation for why it was given was in effect interfering with play, obstructing play from an offside position. I'll toss this up there. If that happened on the halfway line, in terms of that could have been given for obstruction. I think it was on the halfway line if you just stand there. And I do think in terms of the set piece routine, the fact that there were two players standing offside, it was planned in terms of a routine. So I think it was a deliberate action in the sense of where he was standing there. In terms of Cavani, obviously, as knowing that obstruction does usually get given if you run into somebody, he's played it cleverly. Not Tom Cleverly. Used to play for Man United, not there anymore. The time is frustrating. I think in terms of, you could say, if you think it was the right decision, which I'm assuming you don't, based on the comment, you could say, well, it got there in the end. I think in terms of the Villa comparison, and again, I suppose this demonstrates the evolution of VAR, but it's still annoying. Ollie Watkins against West Ham last season had a goal disallowed for offside. They didn't go back and check the fact that it was handball from a foul actually on the should have been a I can't remember, it should have been a penalty for us actually. Or so didn't check that, just checked that one decision. I think the fact that, as you mentioned, went and checked everything that happened in the build-up to the goal adds to the frustration. I think the fact the communication to the fans wasn't there is frustrating because nobody knows what's going on, and I think that just increases the agitation on the field, especially from the attacking side, because generally speaking, the longer it goes on, the worse it is for you in terms of the prospects of the goal being allowed. And they send Oliver over to go and have a look on that freeze frame in terms of Cavani running into him. I mean, if you're just looking in terms of that, then yeah, the prospects of it being given are going to be increased. A nice little toss-up. If it had happened the other way, and United had a goal disallowed, would there have been a feeling of we got lucky? Evidently, we are biased. We clearly display our allegiances in the podcast and the name, everything. So, I think that's a bit of a rhetorical question, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, I would have been very annoyed if it'd been given in terms of handball and a touch from Watkins. And I thought we were out of the woods in terms of when those had kind of gone through. But yeah, an incredibly frustrating decision. And I think in terms of, I think you're going to see a few more teams do what Cavani did now. I think it's opened up a situation whereby, this kind of interfering with play kind of after the free kick's been taken. You're going to get, so people look for the contact in terms of a tackle in the penalty area. People are going to be looking for the contacts in terms of running into people if they've started in an offside position. So it'd be interesting to see whether we run the same routine again, or whether we'll have to delve into the playbook to think of something else.
I think, I'm going to gloss over your question of if it had happened at the other end.
It's a rhetorical question indeed.
Yeah, but you mentioned that if that had happened on the halfway line or whatnot, I'd counter that by saying, how many times did Luke Shaw do exactly the same thing in other areas of the pitch and nothing was given? There was one beautiful give and go between Ramsey and a few other players, and Ramsey carried on across the pitch and Shaw straight into him, and nothing was given. And you sort of think, well, if nothing's going to be given there, then surely it's not a penalty. Michael Oliver obviously didn't feel it was a penalty, and there's no real knowledge as to who's making that final decision. They say it's the referee on the pitch, but is he?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is that human nature. If somebody's told he's going to have a look, and I suppose it was given as off. I think the decision was offside, not a foul as such. But yeah, I take the point in terms of obstruction is given as a foul, not offside. And I think in terms of you mentioned the refereeing display. I mean, it was terrible for most of the game. Let's be honest. In terms of, you're booking Ramsey after 5 minutes, and then you mentioned Luke Shaw, the amount of challenges he was getting away with. I mean,
six till he got booked.
Yeah,
and Fernandez did 3, and he didn't get booked.
I mean, Fernandez is, he's the king of snide, and you got a lot of very good players who are snides. So it's kind of not necessarily a criticism in that sense. But yeah, I think a very poor refereeing display in terms of consistency, and I think ultimately that's what fans look for. Consistency in decisions, and I think the fact that ultimately, because the VAR decision was over analysed, you could say, or significantly analysed for that amount of time, whether you think it was a correct decision or not, and then compared to some of the other decisions, which were clearly on the face of it pretty poor, it's one of those annoying situations where, kind of the feelings of inconsistency, especially when it's all kind of seemingly one-sided, then it does add to the overall feeling of, as you mentioned there, it was a pretty good display from Villa. I mean, in terms of, I'm qualifying it with pretty good because we were clearly a better team. I thought United were terrible. And when they scored the first goal, I'm thinking, oh God, this is going to be all over. But I think we had more possession. I mean, it's a goals game at the end of the day, so possession only gets you so far. But I can't think of too many scenarios where we've gone to Old Trafford and dominated the ball in the manner we did. But why I'm qualifying it as pretty good was we had, a lot of chances given to us by United in that midfield, sloppy passing and in the defence as well. It was pretty shambolic at times from United. But for all the possession, territory, kind of opportunities to have opportunities, we got in those positions coming into in the final third of the field, but didn't create enough, really. I mean, you're thinking in terms of, did De Gea have to make loads of great saves? No. He didn't really have to make, I'm trying to think of whether he had to make any great saves. Maybe some a couple of decent saves come to mind. But a slight, from that team on Monday, a slight creative concern, if I will steal your words that you provided before we went on air, because we got in the positions, and whether it was through sloppy passes on our end or just not having that guile to get those clear-cut opportunities, our dominance didn't translate to peppering De Gea's goal, I didn't think. And that was in the second half, especially when we were on top for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, you could tell there was going to come a stage where we're just going to run out of legs here. And then it's going to peter out, which is what happened, really. I mean, I think in terms of, it got to 70, 75 minutes. We hadn't scored. I think there was a feeling of, we've put in this really big effort. I think it's definitely a real 100% effort from all of the players, really got in there. But yeah, we were knackered, I think, in the last 15 minutes. And unfortunately, Gerrard hit it on the head in terms of his post-match, saying, if you're on top, you got to take your chances, or you got to create chances and then take them, I think. And, a harsh lesson, I think, for Villa based on that performance.
I mean, looking back at it, we created chances. There wasn't enough link up in the final third. And you think that playing against Manchester United, as you say, it's surprising to go there and have more possession than them. And it's even more surprising to get those chances that we did get when you compare them to Manchester United of the 90s and early noughties, the Fergie United. But they're not that same beast anymore. No. They're a puppy that's rolled over for you that might growl when you try and pick up their bone. I think you look at it, and as soon as they scored, we got the right reaction because Watkins went and put one just wide at the back post. You've got Buendia flashing a shot across the goal that Ings tried to get onto the end of. Buendia forced a save from De Gea. He had an effort just deflect wide. And then, of course, there was the big Ollie Watkins chance where he crashed an effort against the crossbar when you felt it was probably easier for him to score. But they were all really first half. Second half, I think there was a shot from McGinn that De Gea pushed wide. Matty Cash had the effort saved that probably wouldn't have gone in anyway. And yes, we got the 2 goals disallowed. But like I said, there wasn't enough. There wasn't. And those last 15 minutes, we did run out of legs, and they probably could have gone through and nicked one if they'd have really tried. However, when Philogene Spidace came on, he injected us with a bit of pace. That bit of skid he did straight away where he slipped over and won a corner was fantastic.
Yeah, I think I could replicate that skill falling over. I think I could be a pro footballer if that was the requirement.
But to think that, Gerrard was still going for it. He went pretty much 4-2-4, didn't he, at the end with El Ghazi, Philogene Spidace, Ings and Watkins. And when you think back to that, we scored a late winner against them earlier in the season. You've got to go to the end. You will get chances. Yep. Man United are nothing special, but the one positive that comes out of a defeat like that, well, 2 positives is, one, we dominated against a Sky 6 team, and number 2, we got them on Saturday. We got a brand new creative linchpin to come in, potentially one of the most prolific assisting fullbacks in the league as well to come in. If you add Coutinho and Digne to that starting lineup, why shouldn't we get vengeance at Villa Park?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a reaction in terms of Coutinho in particular coming. I mean, if the big question is he fit? But we'll leave aside such trivialities for the time being. And in terms of, Digne has had slight issues with the manager at Everton. So he hasn't played for a little while, but he has been obviously playing earlier on in the season for Everton and has Premier League experience. You would anticipate if the deal goes through and he has sufficient time to get used to the players on the training ground, he would play, you'd anticipate. I mean, it depends if and when the deal is done. Coutinho, it's come back from injury, long-term injury. It's going to depend if he's fit or not. But if they are 100% fit and in, you would expect them to both play. And come to Coutinho first, because that's the transfer that has caused the most excitement amongst Villa fans. And I know yourself, Will, has been very excited in terms of having Coutinho. We're saying he goes straight in the starting 11. I'm assuming he does for you in terms of if he's fit, go straight in.
Yeah, definitely. Easily straight in. Even if you can only do 60, 70, 75 minutes, you put him in to create the damage, and then you chuck on a Carney later on, or you chuck on somebody else later. Coutinho is one that you just never saw coming, really, did you? And if someone had said to you, if on our transfer window special, and I'm gonna give a bit away, if anybody had said we should get Philip Coutinho, I'd have laughed at him, and I'd have been like, mate, no way, no chance, too much money. He's played for Barcelona this season. There'll be other bigger clubs that come in for him. And there were other clubs that came in for him around Europe that wanted Philip Coutinho to join, but we managed to bag him on that 6-month loan deal because of Steven Gerrard primarily.
Yeah, that is basically it.
Yeah, yeah, and he's sold a vision. I mean, I don't know whether you heard Coutinho's interview last night, but he was very complimentary, very excited about being at the Villa.
I'd hope so. You know, in terms of that first interview, bloody hell, how I ended up here. These are terrible. It's not going to go very well.
But he spoke even better than I thought he would about the Villa, is what I mean by that. You know, there was the genuine excitement of playing again and being back in the Premier League and linking up with Gerrard and talking about how he knows Douglas Luiz. And I think just even hearing his name get called out over the tannoy at Villa Park, saying that he's in the starting 11, is going to give the rest of the ground such a big boost. There's going to be such euphoria in Aston that it gives you a 12th man already. And, you know, the whole end is a 12th man, really, anyway. But straight away, that Philip Coutinho's in the starting lineup potentially also has a negative impact on Man United in them thinking, oh, bloody hell, he's starting. All right, well, you're playing midfield. You need to be a lot more defensive now than what we wanted you to be, because we want you to man-mark Coutinho because we know what he can do. And straight away, Coutinho's causing all sorts of psychological problems for them and also giving us a psychological boost. It's a no-brainer that he starts, providing he can do a minimum of an hour.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I agree, the impact of Coutinho in terms of on the Villa side is going to be positive. You mentioned in terms of the crowds, they're definitely going to be excited, up for having Coutinho in the starting 11 at Villa. Even if he comes off the bench, when he comes on, you know, there's definitely going to be that reaction. Mentioned in terms of Gerrard, really the reason Coutinho's turned up. The fact that there's an early example of Steven Gerrard attracts players. That's positive, I think, for the club in terms of we've got a marquee deal, if I use that phrase, saying we've got a manager and players want to come and play for him. I mean, obviously they played together, so they had that personal experience, which helped. But that's a message going out to other clubs, other players, you know, over Europe, over the world, potentially, depending on where we're looking. I think that is a positive. In terms of the effect Coutinho will have, I mean, it's 6 months a loan deal, but well, less than 6 months in terms of games. So how much damage can you do really in 6 months? And there's an option to buy, not an obligation to buy. So if the worst comes to the worst, you know, we just send it back and kind of on our way. My concern about Coutinho, he hasn't played for a significant period of time regularly. He's coming back from a long-term injury. I think there is a feeling or recollection of what he was like at Liverpool, where, I mean, he was playing that well to get a move to Barcelona. The fact he's at Barcelona is a big name, obviously, in terms of, you know, where players want to play. Ultimately, their dream destination is Barcelona or Real Madrid. Really, those are the two.
Villa.
Or Villa, especially for South Americans, for Real Madrid, Barcelona, and also for Villa, because we've had a few of those in our time. So his career at Barcelona didn't go to script. I think it's safe to say. You can say that's because they brought him in to play a role that he wasn't suited to. I think that's part of that. But there's always an element of, if you're a creative South American player at Barcelona at that particular time who's not Lionel Messi, then by comparison with one of the greatest players of all time, you are going to come up slightly short, which isn't your fault. On loan at Bayern Munich, they sent him back. Didn't set the world alight there. Obviously didn't play much for Barcelona last year because of injury. I was interested to see comments of Guillaume Balaguer, Spanish correspondent, who has been one of the few voices really in the media who basically said that this is a duff deal for Villa in terms of he's not going to be able to play at a high enough level in the Premier League because he's just not fit enough. And hasn't been for a number of years, and the high intensity of Premier League football isn't going to be suited for Coutinho. Linking into Digne, who will come on to more detail in a moment, the vibes I'm getting from the Coutinho transfer, or if I was going to put my negative hat on, which I have been accused of a few times, it reminds me of Everton bringing in James Rodriguez. There was the name, obviously a big player, had a great World Cup 2014 where he was top scorer, feeling of, man, this is a coup for Everton. I mean, I think Ancelotti was in charge of Everton at the time. So a feeling of, well, he wouldn't have gone to Everton if it wouldn't have been for the manager. Real excitement amongst the Everton fans. Had a decent start, but he's not Everton anymore, mainly because he injured too much and didn't fit ultimately into especially when Benitez turned up. I think that was kind of the end of the line for him at Everton, but kind of turned into a bit of a damp squib. That's my fear for Coutinho. But the fact that he's on loan for 6 months, it's when you add it into the positives that we mentioned in terms of putting Villa's reputation out there, putting the manager's reputation out there, the short-term lift it'll give to the fan base in particular. I don't think you could say it's a bad deal in that sense. You know, I mean, what have you got to lose? And if Coutinho is able to get back to his form, even if, 75, 80% of his form at Liverpool 4 years ago, that's still going to be good enough for Villa for where we are and where we're trying to get to in a couple of years. So not all doom and gloom. I don't think the world's going to fall in terms of the Coutinho deal. And, if we do get him fit, then the option to buy, we trigger it. We're first in the line. And, if ultimately his aim is to get into that World Cup squad for Brazil, which as of today, he's nowhere near that World Cup squad. If he's playing in the World Cup later on in the year and he's at Villa, he's putting in the word, with other Brazilian players, other kind of internationals, like, man, he's come to Villa. Now he's playing at the World Cup. That is going to be a benefit to us. So perfectly understand the logic of the deal. I mean, as much as paying like at least 100 grand a week in wages can be deemed as low risk, we haven't got that option to buy. Well, no, we haven't got that obligation to buy. We've got the option to buy, so we can pull the plug if we need to. So yeah, in that sense, yeah, let's see how it rolls. And I think certainly in terms of that psychological impact, it boosts to the fan base, in terms of there's already positive momentum generally with Gerrard. This just keeps it going a little while longer and demonstrates, the club, it's going to go and do business, in terms of if there's an opportunity, we're going to go and get it done, which linked us nicely onto Coutinho, actually, in terms of business there, getting it done, in terms of similar age to Coutinho, quite a high transfer fee, I would say, in terms of the figures being quoted. But we've beat other clubs who were linked in with him. I think Chelsea, the fact they only wanted him really for 6 months while Chilwell recovered from injury didn't help Chelsea. But, there were other clubs who would have been in for him. Again, World Cup, you'd expect him to be around the French squad later on in the season. Ruthless signing for me in terms of we've identified a need in the squad for an immediate upgrade or competition. Not late 20s against our usual younger recruitment policy, but Gerrard, I'm assuming, has had a big input into this transfer. Said, I think he's an improvement on what we got. He's probably going to be in the first team. We need to improve the team bit by bit, or not bit by bit. We need to be going towards the European aspirations of the board. This is what you need to get it done. In terms of 25 million for a 29-year-old, have you overpaid? Yeah, as I said, probably. But if in 2-3 years' time you're in Europe, or, if in the ultimate dream world, knocking on the door or in the Champions League, 25 million is nothing. So he's got Premier League experience. Until his recent fallings out with Benitez, he was a solid player. I think in terms of the assists, he's one of the highest in the league since he joined. I'll toss another, potentially, I anticipate this is going to be an easy lob for you. Is he better than Matt Targett? Does he get into the first team once he's up to speed and fit?
Yeah.
Moving on.
No, I can understand what you're saying about the philosophy and also about the price tag, and in some ways it's similar. He's in a similar situation to Philippe Coutinho in some ways. I personally don't feel that 20 to 25 million is too much for him, especially when he's, as you say, one of the top assisting fullbacks in the league since joining Everton. He's got the experience of playing for a year at Barcelona as well, 40 caps for France. He'll bag a goal also. He's got a high work rate down that left-hand side, very good in the final third. Not too shabby defensively either. Scored in front of the whole end already this season. So we can link well with Leon Bailey. We know that from the 3-0 win. I think for him, it's the name as well. I mean, Coutinho is one of the top left backs in Premier League football, potentially in European football as well. You mentioned Chelsea were suitors for him. Newcastle were going to go and splash cash on him. Also, West Ham want him. West Ham are doing decently at the moment. Yep. He walked straight into our team. Dependent on whether he signs today, day of recording, Wednesday, the 12th of January, he has more chance of getting into that starting lineup against Man United. If he joins tomorrow and doesn't train until Friday, then probably not as much. Then again, Steven Gerrard has seen Matty Targett play football, so he's got a great chance of getting in there. I think Digne, like Coutinho, has got a massive point to prove. Digne also wants to go to the World Cup in Qatar. He's lost his place to he's lost his place to Hernandez. So he wants to get back in there. He wants to be able to cement his place either in the squad, if not the first team for France. And then you've got Coutinho, who wants to do the same for Brazil. And I think Coutinho has a point to prove in regards to he's got to give back to Steven Gerrard now. Steven Gerrard has taken a bit of a gamble on him because he hasn't played as much. I thought he did well at Bayern when he was playing for them. He was very much a stopgap for Sane joining them on a permanent deal after Robben and Ribéry have both left. So he's got that point to prove, and he wants to do it for Gerrard. I think Digne the same. He wants to play for Steven Gerrard. He wants to come to Villa. There was talk that he only wanted to join a team that were in Europe or a team who were pushing towards Europe. Yep. And for him to come to us now obviously shows that there is that expectation within the club that we are pushing and we should be challenging. Age and fee, as I say, the fee is nothing for me. I'm sure there's players who are similar age who have gone for more money, who aren't as good as Digne as well. Coutinho's rumoured to be 30 odd million. He's the same age, different player, different area of the pitch, obviously, but you've got to spend 30 million to improve the Villa, I think with Digne as well, the age thing, I don't think it matters really because he's an experienced Premier League player and he's an improvement on what we got. If we could have gone and got a 31-year-old left back for 10 million who was better than Matt Targett, I'd hope we'd go and get that 31-year-old for 10 million, even if they only had 1 or 2 seasons in them, because I still think, regardless of whether we sign Digne or not, come the summer, Matty Targett is out the door and we'll be going for Aaron Hickey. And then you've got 2 quality fullbacks, especially with Ashley Young potentially coming to the end of his career. He can cover left back and right back. Hickey can cover both positions as well. But you need someone for here and now to improve us. And with Hickey not being available, are there any better left backs who are available than Digne at the moment? Is he one of the best left backs outside of the top 6? Is he better than some of the top 6 left backs as well? it's one of them, isn't it? Really, he's definitely an upgrade on Target, and he gets in over him, and I think it spells the end of Target's time at the Villa.
Now, I mean, it's a good point in terms of availability. In January, you don't very often get players available for a fee that you're comfortable paying that upgrade your team. I mean, it's usually the summer where the merry-go-round goes into full force. You know, more time, more players kind of looking for moves. So I think in terms of being able to get an upgrade in January in an area of need in the team, one of the greater areas of need in the team, has to be seen as a positive. And you make a good point in terms of Hickey, because if he comes in the summer, then you've got Digne, the more experienced pro, for a few years. I mean, I don't think Hickey will come expecting and being happy with sitting on the bench, but you've got a transition plan already there in place in terms of have the experience of Digne. Hickey kind of becomes more involved, and then Digne's on a 3-4 year deal or whatever the final negotiations come out with. You've got your succession plan in place, kind of already there, looking for the next, decade. And if that happens, I agree with you. I think Target's out. I've used the word a few times in terms of kind of the regime over the last few months. I think it's ruthless in terms of this opportunity came up. We've taken it. I mean, in terms of, you mentioned 4.5 years there, the contracts. If Digne is playing for Villa for 4.5 years and we're in Europe or Champions League at the end of 4.5 years, yeah, the money, it will be irrelevant in terms of 20-25 million. And you'll say that's, very good money well spent. So I think in terms of, that clinical question, is Digne better than Target? Is he going to go in the team? Yes. So it's okay. We can get him. Let's go and spend the money. So, and it's not too, I'm just trying to recollect in terms of, I mentioned in terms of the age kind of policy over the last few years, so it's slightly contrary to that. But there's not too many examples of Villa in the transfer market recently that come to my mind of being that ruthless in terms of, we need somebody who's better than you. We're going to go and get him. And we have. So there you go. So it's a sign of that. And there's been talk on, I saw we've retweeted a tweet from Jamie Gray. Go and check out our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, which mirrors a comment that you made off air that Coutinho is kind of the biggest transfer, biggest profile signing of Villa in the Premier League era, was Jamie's opinion, which I know is one you share, Will. Would it be fair to say?
Definitely. Maybe a lot of that is to do with social media nowadays and being able to get the message out there and get the news and information out there. But definitely there's that excitement factor around him. And there's been the build up to it, which is not like Villa transfers recently. They tend to just be, oh, by the way, we're signing them, and a day later they're signed. Coutinho, there was the build up for a few days. What he did at Liverpool, the fact he left them for 142 odd million. He's played for Barcelona, he's played for Bayern Munich, played for Brazil, played for Inter Milan as well, not to forget. And everything he did at Liverpool, including that very cheeky goal against Man United, absolutely beautiful. Please replicate that in front of the whole end at the weekend. He's an exciting signing. The only ones who I think come close, Leon Bailey was exciting, but not on the same level as Coutinho. When you think you put them at their best, you're going to roll your eyes and smile. Danny Ings would have been, but that was more the fact he came out of the blue. There was no build up to that. If there had been, it could have potentially been higher than where it is placed in regards to the wow factor signings. Stan Collymore at the time was very much because of what he was doing at Liverpool, but also the fact he was a Villa fan. Dion Dublin was quite exciting. Paul Merson, quite exciting. I'm going back through them now, aren't I? The David Ginola, Dave mentioned David Ginola, but he didn't live up to the hype. The other one that, and I think we've gone back to this before when we talked about big signings, is Darren Bent. Darren Bent, there was 2 or 3 days, it very much came out of the blue, 24 million bid, accepted. He's on his way to Villa. I remember it breaking on Sky Sports News and thinking, wow, what a signing this is. He's going to fire us to safety. He's going to do this with Philip Coutinho. Now it's like, wow, what a signing. He's going to attract other people to come and join us, which is going to fire us to Europe. I don't think it's all on Philip Coutinho's shoulders. He's not going to be carrying the weight of the world on them. He's able to spread the load, which we haven't been able to do for the last couple of years because Jack very much did everything for us. Whereas now it's a case of this one name helps you bring in other players who all at their best and all playing well and all playing the Gerrard way will be able to fire us up the league. And then you think we're, 14th in the league at the moment? If we can get up to 9th or 8th, or even 10th, that's 1, 2, 3 places higher than last year. That's a good chunk of money higher as well. And then when you offset that against the outgoings for the players that we bought, those prices don't seem too much. And remembering the fact that we still haven't spent any of the Jack Grealish money really, because all those signings in the summer, if you take out the Twanzebe loan fee now after him leaving, came to 95 million. So that was -5. So you potentially got 105 million there to spend, on top of any other money that Dean Smith was going to have at the time, say 30 or 40 million. Do we have quite a bit to spend? And by spending it on players now, getting us higher up the league is only going to put us in good stead for next year. And if we don't get into Europe, bringing in players like Hickey, who I agree won't want to sit on the bench, and good, that's the mentality that we want here. We want players who will come and challenge for the first team. Hopefully, it gives us a better quality to stay in the cups for longer and to challenge for the cups for longer. So there's more games, more opportunity for players to play. They're probably going to be happier if they're playing 20 games a season as opposed to 5 or 6 games a season. Some of those, of course, will play every minute of every game, potentially, or in the league at least. And you're constantly building a team which starts to replicate what the likes of Chelsea and Man City and Liverpool are doing in regards to, we buy a team of players who can come and challenge for the first 11. We're not buying backup players. What's the point in buying someone who isn't as good as Matt Targett when you know that you need somebody better than him to push on? I think they are being ruthless. You've said that a few times recently, and it's nail on the head, very much so. And it's so refreshing to see that actually we are acting like a big club in the fact that we want to continuously improve. And I put it out on Twitter the other day and I said, Joe Gomez at his peak physical condition, and I said it on the transfer window special as well, he's one of the best English centre-backs at full fitness, in my opinion. He gets in ahead of Maguire, he gets in ahead of Stones, he gets in ahead of all of them apart from Tyrone Mings. No, gets in ahead of Tyrone Mings as well. He is an improvement. So you go and get him and you go, okay, who am I dropping, Konsa or Mings? All right, at the moment, and people aren't going to like this, I'm dropping Konsa for Joe Gomez because we know that we can't live without Mings in defence from previous displays where Mings hasn't been in defence compared to Konsa, but I can't really remember Konsa not playing. So you go and buy these players and you get the best players and you are ruthless with them and you bring through the best youngsters as well, which is what we're trying to do. And you become the 1990s Man United, if you like. You've got to follow that sort of a model. What Fergie did with the youngsters, bringing them through the class of 92, which is what we're trying to do now with the class of 22. And you look at him where he got rid of Hughes and Kanchelskis and all of these players who were fantastic for them. Yeah, okay, he promoted the youth, but if you had to go out and buy a Dwight York or an Andy Cole or somebody else, he wasn't afraid to do it. And that's what set them apart from other teams. And because there's so many teams that are willing to do that now, if you want to be up there, if you want to be sat at the same table as them, you've got to do it as well.
Yeah, but I mean, I would take competing with West Ham and Arsenal at this stage. The Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, ultimate aim, you know, in a few years' time. But my two pennies worth in terms of the size of the Coutinho transfer, if you're looking at it in terms of how the hell have we got him? You know, what a great kind of almost feeling taking a step down, maybe perhaps kind of thinking, man, he could have gone somewhere better than us. I agree with Darren Bent. And the name I had, which you mentioned, was Stan Collymore. You know, in terms of from Liverpool, a couple of years, kind of that mid-90s when he was at Forest, first season at Liverpool, one of the best strikers in the league. Yeah, I remember you mentioned the Villa connection. Oh, wow, how the hell have we got him? Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But in terms of a big name, you know, in terms of seen as a real kind of coup, yeah, Collymore was the one I had. So, and then you mentioned Ben, and I agree with that as well. So, it doesn't happen very often in terms of that kind of feeling. So, hopefully, we will get the first demonstration of the brave new world being a more glorious, better world going towards that European qualification on Saturday night. Like Groundhog Day, it's Man United again at Villa Park, 5:30 in front of the Sky cameras. We've touched upon a little bit in terms of whether we think Coutinho might play, whether Coutinho might play. How do you think this game is panning out? I am, you know, in a perhaps a rare display of optimism. I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a good one.
I'm looking forward to it. I think all Steven Gerrard needs to do is show that decision again on the videos. Tell them how well they played. Have the match stats up. Have the picture of Philippe Coutinho in the Villa shirt up and go, look, lads, he's over there. Have Digne in the dressing room as well. And I think it buoys you. The fans are going to be up for it anyway. The fans are going to be so up for it because of the trials and tribulations of Monday night.
Yep.
I'm very positive. I mean, I'm positive anyway when it comes to the Villa, but I'm really positive. And I think that if we play to our very best, which Gerrard will be demanding as a minimum, I think we smash Man United. I really think that we can get a very good result against them. A lot of it will depend, though, how many goals they get on Cristiano Ronaldo and if he's back and they're going to play him, because he's a very good footballer, you know, one of the greatest of all time. And he likes to goal against the Villa. I can see him getting one or two. And I know David De Gea has had a resurgence in form, but I can see it being wave after wave after wave of Villa attack. I'm going to say 3-1 Villa. I think we're going to go back to that old. Remember when we had the AST shirts and we won 3-1? I sat in the Doug Ellis, even though the Doug Ellis was closed for building. I was sat in there with the builders. It was a great day. I remember walking past the Man United fans when they scored with my mum and my granddad, and one of the fans went, my mum went, fuck off, we're 3-1 up. It's the first time I ever heard a swear. There we go. Sorry for the language. I think we could run riot over them. Man United are nothing special. What can they bring into that team that wasn't there on Monday, apart from Ronaldo? And I'm not just saying that as a blasé comment.
Yeah.
Also, really been doing it.
Also, I'd say in terms of, I'm going to hazard a guess you don't rate him particularly highly, but Harry Maguire, if he's fit, he goes into that team ahead of Lindelof. And that is I think it says more about Lindelof, but I think that's a massive upgrade if Maguire is fit and he is playing centre-back. Ronaldo as well. I mean, scores goals, you know, I mean, in terms of... I'd be interested to see in terms of Man United. I mean, demonstrating, I'm not going to say how far they've fallen. I mean, you know, in terms of, you know, they've lost one game since they got the new manager in. It was a surprise to see them play with wingers on Monday, which should be a surprise because that is the way Man United traditionally always play and demand. And they look much more comfortable playing wingers, well, at least for the first 10 minutes, and then it all went a bit wrong. So I'd anticipate they would play the same way again. I'll be interested to see if Rashford plays. He looked very out of sorts on Monday. I think there's unfortunate, you know, it seems like it's not our problem on this podcast, but it seems like there's something going on behind the scenes, perhaps, because he just didn't look like he was fully on it Monday. Does Sancho play? Perhaps. I mean, he hasn't done too much for United, so you can't say you're overly concerned. I mean, he'll be practicing his penalty technique, not in terms of taking the penalty, it's just in terms of falling over in the box to get the penalty. I mean, he's got form for that at Villa Park, shall we say. So I think they were not very good on Monday. I think, you know, even United would admit that. If they play like they did on Monday, if they play like that on Saturday, that they will get smashed. I mean, I think I agree in terms of the team talk, as you mentioned, writes itself, or just press play on the video, or, you know, VCR. We'll throw that in for our older listeners. Younger listeners might not know what that is. It's not VAR. We just have a similar. So I don't think United are going to be that bad again. I mean, you mentioned in terms of the 3-1 win, 95. That was the last time we beat them in the league, wasn't it? At Villa Park. So there's always that kind of hesitation. I agree. There's going to be goals in this game. I mean, Villa score most of the time, most games this season. So that was, you know, I mean, we had 2 disallowed kind of on Monday. So, and we also concede goals, which, you know, kind of haven't quite got that solidity. Maybe Coutinho will help contribute to that, although perhaps more as an attacking force we would expect to see him. But there's always Villa Man United, there's always that rivalry. It's not the right word, because we haven't really been, there's that first Premier League season where we're competing for the title, and, you know, kind of one of those sliding doors moments. And because we are based in Birmingham, we grew up with plenty of Man United fans popping up in that 90s playground era. So, you know, there's always was a United fan to have a comment or two, you know, as regards to whenever they were playing Villa. So that does add to that little bit of extra impetus, shall we say, in this game. And especially because this game often is summed up by Villa taking the lead and then United coming back and either getting a point or winning. So there's always that disappointment kind of linked with this. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, obviously, we've got a new regime in Gerrard. He's identified very quickly in terms of, you know, his press conference after the game on Monday night. I like what he said in terms of Man United's goal was poor defending. We didn't really touch upon that. Don't really want to touch upon that now, but it was like, we need to improve on that. We need to do it quick. And he's mentioned in terms of ruthlessness, he mentioned in terms of, we just need to be more clinical. We're going to work on that. I'm going to make sure that happens in the short term. That was good to hear in terms of, I mean, you know, I mean, it wasn't too hard to identify kind of, we should, you know, we talked about it earlier in the podcast, so they can't say it's too kind of, you know, kind of opaque, but we mentioned in terms of the pool Gerrard has in terms of players coming in terms of the players already there, when, even if he is pressing the play on the VCR, when Gerrard talks, people are listening, you know, in terms of that squad. So
you believe him, don't you? Like, if he says this is going to happen, you believe that it's going to happen, and you believe that they are going to get better at finishing, they are going to get better defensively, and that he is going to improve the squad. And when he turns around and says, you are going to be excited by our January signings, well, yeah, you better believe him.
Whether it happens in 5 days, but perhaps might even be slightly beyond Gerrard. But, well, maybe not. I mean, you've hinted upon your feeling of the way the game is going to go. Score prediction?
3-1.
3-1. Sticking with 3-1. I'd give you a final chance. But no, we're going 3-1.
I'll be honest with you. I don't agree about Maguire being an upgrade on Lindelof necessarily. I think Maguire's a very good defender. You know, he earned his move. He was great at Leicester, great at Hull. Hasn't hit the heights that he should have at Man United. We're not a Man United podcast, so I don't really care that he's the captain, but he shouldn't be their captain. I think that depending on who you have up front, you run at Harry Maguire all game and you're going to get change out of him and you double up on him. And whether that's Buendia, Coutinho, Watkins, Ings, Villigence, Bidet, Steven Gerrard, Gary McAllister, my mum, your mum, the steward, it doesn't matter.
Gary Neville, bring him from the Sky Gantry.
Why not? You know, Roy Keane just coming on going, oh, you're rubbish. But, you know, and I think we get change out of him. And Varane is going to have to do an awful lot more defending with Maguire alongside him than he would with anybody else.
I mean, in terms of the quality or otherwise of Maguire, I think that's one question. He's better than Lindelof. I mean, I think, you know, in terms of, as you said, we're not a United podcast, and we'll let our United listeners put in their kind of views. But yeah, I mean, you can have a whole debate about Maguire demonstrating where United are now as compared to where they were 10 years ago as to why Maguire's captain. Go with that. I would be happier with Lindelof playing centre-back than Maguire. But I agree with you in terms of Maguire isn't, you know, this colossus, you know, Virgil van Dijk type defender where, I mean, well, we've had success against Virgil van Dijk at Villa Park as well. But in terms of, yeah, generally, you know, he's not striking, you know.
He's no Paul McGrath. He's no Paul McGrath.
No, it's not Nemanja Vidic, Rio Ferdinand. It's not Jaap Stam, you know, Ronnie Hodgson. It's not that quality of centre back, I would say. But he's better than Lindelof. But is he good enough to stop the Villa win? For Will, no, 3-1 Villa. I agree in terms of the number of goals in the game. I think there's going to be 4.
You can say 2-2, ain't you?
I am going to say 2-2. Yeah, I mean, I think it's old habits. Old habits die hard. Yeah, I you know, we're positive about the future in Gerrard and the culture change that's happening at Villa, you know, in terms of the ambition to get into Europe. And, you know, we're not going to leave any stone unturned in that mission. Until I see it happen once, there's just so much baggage in terms of Man United. And, yeah, I mean, 26 coming up to 27 years we haven't beat them at home. I mean, that's terrible. It is going to happen sometime. When it does happen, I am going to be the happiest, you know, Eeyore type character that you will have seen. 2-2. Okay. You know, in terms of I just can't quite bring myself to do it because I know the disappointment that's going to happen if we don't win, and it's going to be. You start looking at yourself. I mean, in terms of, I didn't share this with you before the game on Monday night. I was there in the build-up with, you know, I think I predicted United to win. I think I had extra time, but in the build-up to the game, I was there thinking, I think we can do this, which I automatically knew meant a loss. So, you know, I kept that to myself, and you know, with better, more clinical finishing in the final third, we would have done. So. I'm going with kind of that trepidation kind of to fully go into the sun. I'm going 2-2. I think, you know, in terms of the ups and downs, hopefully we get to see 1 or 2 of our new signings in the starting 11 or on the bench. You know, have to see how those transfers are wrapped up in the next couple of days. And if you want to see when those transfers are wrapped up and whether we've got any other signings in terms of Steven Gerrard's sleeve, then the best place to keep up to date with all Villa news is at Talk Trinity, our Twitter page. You know, we'll be feverishly working maybe between the hours of 9 and 5. Might have an hour for lunch, but you know, we will be there keeping you up to date with all things Villa, all things polls, all things opinions. You know, whether we agree or not, I mean, you know, we've all got them, and you know, there to facilitate the Villa debate, and you know, we're all on the same side in terms of wanting Villa to do as well as we can. So check us out on our Twitter page. check us out on our YouTube channel if you're not already a subscriber at Talk Trinity on YouTube. I mean, we are, like Villa, we're slowly working our way up the rankings in terms of our subscriber numbers. So it'd be great to have you on board and you get the notifications as to when the main podcast drops, and also our 5-minute, 10-minute, number of minutes shorter videos that we're dropping in for your viewing pleasure from time to time. So check those out. If you haven't listened to us via a podcast, kind of on the audio medium, if you're a fan of the YouTube channel, but you got to go outside sometimes and you don't want to miss a second, go and have a look on, or have a listen on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Stitcher, some other ones that I probably forgot, but are just as important to our revenue stream, which is in the pennies before tax. So we're actually losing money. But apart from that, there's plenty of ways to keep up to date with all things Villa. We will be back with you sooner than you can shake a VAR decision out of the official in Stockley Park or wherever they are. But before we leave you today, I'll pass you over to Will Forrest for his final thoughts. Just confirm that for the end. I mean, they may come. I can't guarantee, but pass you to Will. And yeah, that is a good time for me to shut up. So over to you, Will.
I'm afraid, contrary to the spoiler that you thought there's going to be no final farts here. Just a massive thank you to our sponsor. This video is sponsored today by Big Baz's Bets. That is, whenever the Villa are predicted to win by Baz, you put money on the opposition. I'm going to be setting up a Twitter page for that at Big Baz's Bets. Okay, that'll be sponsored by Final Farts as well. Thank you for coming on this journey with us so far. Let's hope that the next podcast is a positive one in regards to signings and also in regards to Baz's outlook on the Villa. And just finally breaking that Villa Park hoodoo that Man United have got over us. Until then, cheers to our, thank you very much. I'm Villa till I die. Up the Villa.